The death of the Overmind, and with it, the loss of countless Cerebrates, left the Zerg horde in chaos. Leaderless, they rampaged unchecked across Ire, the sacred homeworld of the Protoss, consuming all life in their path. The devastation wrought was absolute. 70% of the Protoss population slaughtered, their ruling conclave wiped from existence. Yet, amid the ruin, a handful of champions endured. Aldaris the Judicator, Phoenix the Warrior Reborn, Zeratul the Dark Templar, and the Terran Renegade Jim Raynor. Together, they stood as the last hope for Ire's survivors. While the Protoss fought for their very existence, the Terrans forged a new destiny. Arcturus Mengs, having cast down the corrupt Terran Confederacy, proclaimed himself Emperor of the newborn Terran Dominion. The fractured human factions of the Koprulu Sector, desperate for protection from the alien scourge, quickly bent the knee. With General Edmund Duke at his side, Minx absorbed the remnants of the Confederate military and secured his position as the sector's supreme Terran power. Yet even in his triumph, his thoughts lingered on Sarah Kerrigan, once his trusted lieutenant, now the Queen of Blades. Beyond the Koprulu Sector, the Terrans of Earth had watched in silence. Since the days of exile, the United Powers League had monitored its distant cousins, content to observe without interfering. That changed the moment the Protoss and Zerg revealed themselves. For the first time, humanity on Earth faced the undeniable reality of intelligent alien life. Panic gripped the League. Even the last independent nations, long resistant to UPL control, surrendered their sovereignty in the name of unity. Thus was born the United Earth Directorate, a government forged in fear, reshaped into a militarized power bent on survival. The UED devoted every resource to understanding the alien threat. For months, its analysts charted the strengths and weaknesses of both Protoss and Zerg. When word reached them of a newly spawned Overmind, the Directorate resolved to act. An expeditionary force was raised, commanded by Admiral Gerard Dugal and his loyal comrade, Vice Admiral Alexei Stukov. Their mission was audacious: to seize control of the Zerg, harness their feral might, and crush both Dominion and Protoss resistance in one campaign. Yet, even at the onset, doubts lingered. Dugal distrusted the very idea of wielding the swarm as a weapon, believing such power to be too great a risk. He resolved to rely, wherever possible, on conventional arms and disciplined strategy. Still, the Directorate's plan was set. The fleet would be small, its strength multiplied by captured weaponry and careful precision. With that, the UED prepared to extend Earth's reach into the Koprulu Sector, believing the time had finally come to claim dominion over their wayward kin. The United Earth Directorate's expeditionary fleet slipped into the Koprulu Sector unseen, its presence unnoted by the Terran Dominion. Their first act was a test of arms, though no weapons of their own were fired. Instead, Admiral Dugal and Vice Admiral Stukov unleashed the Zerg upon an unsuspecting Terran colony. From orbit, they watched as the swarm descended, gathering data as the people below screamed and died. The Directorate did nothing to intervene, allowing the colony to be consumed before abandoning it to the hive. On Ire, leadership fell to young Artanis, newly appointed as Praetor. He joined Aldaris, Zeratul, and the Executor at a hidden base where they plotted their escape. At Zeratul's urging, the surviving Kali rallied to Ire's last functioning warp gate. Through swarms of Zerg they fought, Phoenix and Jim Raynor holding the line while the Executor shepherded the survivors through. The Protoss fled to the shadowed world of Shakuras, but Dagoth's forces seized the gate and poured through in pursuit. On Shakuras, Artanis, Zeratul, and the Executor searched for ground to claim, only to be ambushed by Hydralisks. They were saved by the Dark Templar, who revealed themselves as unexpected allies. Meanwhile, Raynor and Phoenix fought to secure the warp gate on Ire. 3 days after the evacuation began, the two warriors shut the gate down, cutting off pursuit but stranding countless Protoss. Some would splinter into new groups, like the Shelna Kryos, while others, including notable heroes, were lost in stasis cells. Soon, 2 of Dagoth's Cerebrits entrenched themselves within a Zelnaga temple. Razagal, matriarch of the Dark Templar, revealed that the temple could purge Shakuras of the Zerg. At her command, the Cerebrits were destroyed. It was then that Sarah Kerrigan appeared, demanding to be escorted to the Protoss Citadel. There, before Razagal, Aldaris, Zeratul, Artanis, and the Executor, Kerrigan announced the existence of a new Overmind. She swore she was no longer a mindless killer bound to its will. Aldaris refused to believe her and stormed away. Yet Zeratul's focus remained fixed on Shakuras' survival. When Razagal urged them to accept Kerrigan's aid in retrieving the Uraj and Kalas crystals, the Protoss reluctantly agreed. The first step lay on Braxis, a world abandoned long ago. Guided by Razagal's orders to destroy any who barred their path, Artanis, Zeratul, the Executor, and Kerrigan led an assault against entrenched Dominion forces. Dominion fortresses fell one by one, and Kerrigan's ruthless efficiency began to earn Zeratol's wary trust. In the end, the protoss destroyed the great stronghold guarding the crystal, and the Uraj was secured. But the UED was not blind. Seeing Braxis as vital to their campaign, they established a vast orbital blockade, bristling with missile turrets powered by fusion generators. When Stukov demanded the Protoss to surrender, Artanis refused. Instead, he struck directly at the generators. And one by one, the turrets fell silent, and the Protoss fleet broke free of the trap. Frustrated, the Directorate abandoned pursuit. The next crystal lay on Char, once left behind during the Great War. The Kalis now lay perilously close to the still-growing Overmind. Together, the Protoss and Kerrigan's controlled Zerg planned their strike, either to snatch the crystal outright or weaken the Overmind enough to pacify its guardians. In the end, the mission succeeded. The Kalis was reclaimed, and the united force returned to Shakarus. Even as the crystals were brought home, Aldaris discovered a grim truth. Razagal was enthralled by Kerrigan's psychic will. By the time the fleet of the matriarch returned, Aldaris had rallied a legion of Kalai survivors to rise against her rule. Razagal commanded the executor to put down the rebellion. Though troubled by her fervor, both Zeratol and Artanis obeyed. Dark Archons were summoned, the first in a millennium, to strengthen their hand. In battle, Zeratol and Artanis tore away Aldaris' illusions and cornered him. He refused to surrender, instead trying to reveal Razagal's corruption. Before he could speak further, Kerrigan herself arrived and struck him down. Furious, Zeratol demanded she leave Shakarus. Kerrigan only laughed. Her goals had already been met. The Cerebrits were dead, and she had no further use for the world. She departed, leaving the Protoss to face the aftermath. With betrayal burning in their hearts, the Protoss turned to the final task. Zeratol knew activating the Zelnaga Temple would serve Kerrigan's designs, but there was no other choice. Together, Artanis and Zeratol carried the Uraj and Kalis into the temple. Outside, the Protoss fought a desperate battle against the Zerg swarms, buying time as the structure awakened. When at last the crystals flared, the temple unleashed its power. The Zerg were annihilated. Shakarus was saved, though at a terrible cost. Once verdant, the world was reduced to a wasteland of scorched dunes and broken ruins. The Protoss had endured, but the shadow of Kerrigan's treachery still lingered over them all. The United Earth Directorate's fleet returned to Braxis, their eyes set on cracking open the Dominion from within. succeed, they needed access to the Dominion's primary data net and its weapons diagnostics. For this, Atlas Wing was dispatched to capture the capital city of Borealis. Yet their landing zone was poorly chosen, bereft of Vespene gas and set against heavy defenses. Salvation came in the form of Lieutenant Samir Duran, commander of the so-called Confederate Resistance Forces. Duran offered them a secret path, a rear approach that would bypass Borealis' stronghold. He cloaked his offer in reason. He and his men, he said, were dedicated to the downfall of Arcturus Minsk. An alliance with the UED seemed only natural. Stukov harbored doubts, but Dugal agreed. Together, UED and Duran's forces stormed Borealis, crushing its Dominion garrison. From the city's databanks, the Directorate learned much about the Dominion, including the travel plans of Emperor Minsk himself. He was bound for Umoja to visit his son Valerian at the home of Valerian's grandfather, Aelin Pasture. A raid was staged to assassinate Minsk at this gathering, but the attempt failed. Undeterred, the UED pressed on. Intelligence pointed them next to the Dylarian shipyards, where Dominion battle cruisers lay in dry dock. Dominion reinforcements could arrive within 16 hours, Duran warned, so speed was vital. UED troops infiltrated, commandeering ship after ship. General Duke himself led a counterattack, refusing to yield even after Stukov revealed the fleet's true Earthborn origin. The battle was fierce, but the UED's newly stolen vessels triumphed. With Dylar 4 conscripted and the shipyards themselves destroyed, the Directorate's hold on the sector tightened. It was then that UED researchers unearthed whispers of a powerful relic, the Psi Disruptor, a Confederate device lost during the fall of Tarsonis. Unlike a Psi emitter, this construct could disrupt Zerg's psionic links entirely. Duran counseled its destruction, warning that such a weapon was too dangerous to exist. Stukov disagreed, insisting its power was the key to defeating the swarm. Dugal sided with Duran, or so it seemed. Duran was ordered to secure the relic, and after burning through 4 Zerg hives to reach it, he prepared to destroy it, only to be intercepted at the last moments by ghosts dispatched by Stukov, who had other plans for the device. The UED's next target was Core Hall itself, the heart of Minsk's Dominion. Dominion High Command knew the storm was coming. In desperation, they tested a new plasma pulse weapon at the Broken Mesa, a weapon they hoped could annihilate the Directorate fleet. But betrayal cut them deeper than enemy fire. Senior scientist Osmel Dodds sabotaged the weapon, overloading its systems in a bid to curry favor with the UED. The resulting explosion tore apart both the weapon and its research facility. The stage was set for invasion. The UED now faced two formidable defenses: Minsk's vast nuclear arsenal and Core Hall's defensive fleet of battlecruisers. The Directorate's timetable forced a grim choice. They could only strike one before launching their ground assault. Whichever the case, their preemptive attack succeeded, and the path to the capital of Augustgrad was open. Minsk's armies fought bitterly, unleashing counterattacks and standing their ground with stubborn ferocity. Yet, the Directorate's numbers and momentum could not be denied. Augustgrad fell, and Minsk, cornered aboard the NORAD 3, was forced to seek parley. But the Emperor would not face his end at Dougal's hands. On ire, Kerrigan approached Raynor and Phoenix with a proposal: rescue Minsk and bring him to her. Raynor, spurred by the greater threat of a second overmind in UED hands, reluctantly agreed. As the UED prepared to execute Minsk and his officers, salvation arrived. The Hyperion and a protoss fleet blinked into existence, tearing Minsk from his captors by dimensional recall. Enraged, the Directorate pursued, chasing Raynor and Minsk to Ire, where they sought refuge at a protoss encampment surrounding a warp gate. Zerg swarmed nearby, quiescent but ready to ignite into violence at the slightest spark. The UED struck hard, intent on destroying the encampment. Yet, as their forces pressed in, the warp gate activated, throwing the Zerg into a frenzy. In the chaos, Raynor and Minsk fled in a transport, only to be intercepted by a Directorate strike force. But then came the final betrayal. A vast swarm of Zerg crashed down upon the battlefield, summoned not by chance, but by Duran's design. He had withdrawn his troops at the critical moment, feigning ignorance. Stukov, furious, departed the battlefield in pursuit of his own suspicions. The Zerg consumed everything in their path. Raynor and Minsk slipped away, and the warp gate imploded in their wake. Admiral Stukov journeyed to Braxis, bringing with him his elite guard. There, he began rebuilding the Psi Disruptor. To Dougal, this move made little sense, until his sensors confirmed that the device was indeed active and fully functional. Duran was quick to poison the Admiral's mind, framing Stukov's actions as treachery. Swayed by his words, Dougal placed Duran in charge of a strike force, ordering him to make Stukov answer for his crimes. This assault tore its way through the Disruptor's defenses until they reached Stukov himself. In the confrontation that followed, Duran shot Stukov, disappearing into the shadows immediately after. Mortally wounded, Stukov used his last breath to warn Dougal that the real traitor was Duran, that the lieutenant might even be infested. But the realization came too late. With Duran gone, the UED troops found themselves battling swarms of Zerg that had infiltrated the Disruptor. Worse still, its core had been rigged to overload. In desperation, the remnants of Duran's strike force and Stukov's loyalists banded together, fighting side by side to stabilize the weapon. They succeeded, and the psi disruptor remained on Braxis, safeguarded by a planetary garrison. The Directorate then turned its sights upon Char. With the disruptor active, Zerg coordination faltered, their broods scattered and confused. The UED fleet carved a path to the surface and confronted the Overmind itself. 3 Guardian broods stood in their way, one bolstering sunken colonies to unnatural resistance, another spawning waves of infested Terrans, and a third capable of birthing a monstrous Torask, a breed of Ultralisk that rose again and again after death. Piece by piece, the UED destroyed them all. With the broods broken, medics approached the infant Overmind, pacifying it with potent neurostimulants. Victory was at hand, until Duran reappeared. By his side was Kerrigan. She mocked Dougal, taunting him with Stukov's death, and vowed to claim the swarm for herself. As her forces clashed with the Directorate, she withdrew, leaving the UED to consolidate its hollow triumph. The fleet issued a triumphant report back to Earth, heavy with propaganda and lies. Stukov's death was buried beneath falsehood, and Project Black Flag took shape, using psychers and drugs to keep the Overmind in chains. But the psi disruptor crippled Kerrigan's command over her swarm. Broods slipped from her grasp. To rebuild, she bound a new Cerebrit to her service, promising it survival if it obeyed her completely. Duran reported that Zerg on Tarsanis had risen in revolt. Leading her reduced minions, the Cerebrit moved from hive to hive, reclaiming them one by one. Resistance was fierce, but each victory swelled her numbers as defectors joined her. Hunter-killers and even Torask strains fell back under her banner. The rebellion was crushed, and Kerrigan's rule restored. Seeking her next step, Kerrigan reached out to unlikely allies. Minsk was delivered to her in cryogenic hibernation by none other than Phoenix and Raynor. She told them she bore Minsk no malice and offered him a bargain: her aid in retaking Core Hall, in exchange for a psi emitter to summon enough Zerg to destroy the psi disruptor. Minsk, powerless to refuse, agreed. Raynor's raiders struck first, demolishing the external generators that powered the device. Then, Minsk's SCVs descended with the emitter, drawing swarms of Zerg, drones, devouring ones, hunter-killers, even a Torask, straight to Kerrigan's hive cluster. With their aid, the psi disruptor was annihilated. Victory was hers, but unease simmered. Her allies wondered how long their pact would last now that Kerrigan commanded the swarm unopposed. For the moment, their eyes turned toward Core Hall. To prepare, Kerrigan needed resources. She set her gaze on Moria. Phoenix led the strike. Together, their forces crippled defenses, destroyed factories, and stripped the world of 10,000 minerals. With Core Hall in sight, Kerrigan, Raynor, Phoenix, and Minx planned carefully. The UED had dug deep, fortresses, legions of troops, and their enslaved overmind. Raynor and Phoenix struck first, tearing at Augustgrad's outer defenses. Kerrigan's swarm then swept through the city itself, recapturing it for Minsk. Fewer Zerg opposed them than expected, leaving Kerrigan to suspect the Overmind resisted its shackles. Regardless, Augustgrad was won, and Minx re-established his seat. Duke was dispatched to fortify their hold. Yet Kerrigan had no intention of honoring her alliance. With Core Hall reclaimed, her allies had outlived their usefulness. As Duke's forces regrouped and Phoenix's warriors rested, the swarm turned on them. For 6 merciless minutes, Kerrigan's Zerg rampaged unchecked. Both Duke, aboard the NORAD-3, and Phoenix himself took the field, but neither survived. When the bloodletting ended, Kerrigan recalled her forces to Tarsanis, leaving behind shattered armies and broken bonds. Minx swore vengeance. Raynor's hatred for her, once tempered by memory and hope, burned hotter than ever. Kerrigan had shown her true colors. 2 days after the massacre on Core Hall, the UED Expeditionary Fleet unleashed their enslaved Zerg upon Kerrigan's fortress on Tarsanis. Hundreds of creatures surged forward, directed not by the Overmind, whose leash they barely held, but by human scientists struggling to coordinate them. Genetic engineers had even begun tampering with passive strains, reshaping them into weapons. The assault broke through many of Kerrigan's hive clusters. Yet, her Cerebrid rallied the remnants, and Kerrigan struck at the heart of her attackers. She ordered the deaths of the scientists, and with their deaths, the altered Zerg spun out of control, turning the tide, and Kerrigan's swarm achieved victory. But to destroy the Overmind, she needed more than her own strength. She required the Dark Templar, and for them, she needed Razagal. So Kerrigan and Duran returned to Chakaras. Razagal resided within Talamatros, a fortress whose power pylons generated an electromagnetic field that shielded it from Zerg air power. Duran proposed sabotage. He would plant charges on the pylons and overload the grid, collapsing the city's defenses. Kerrigan approved. As the ground shook with detonations, the pylons crumbled. The city fell in fire, and in the chaos, Razagal was taken. Kerrigan brought her captive to Char, where her final designs awaited. As she had foreseen, Zeratul arrived with a protoss force seeking vengeance. Kerrigan revealed Razagal as a hostage, forcing the Dark Templar into a grim pact. slay the Overmind for her, and she would release their matriarch. Zeratul raged, but Razagal herself urged compliance. And together, Protoss and Swarm fell upon the UED and their enslaved Zerg. The Alliance triumphed, and Zeratul struck the killing blow upon the Overmind, the Nerazim finishing the Cerebrates one by one. Yet, when Zeratul demanded Razagal's freedom, the truth was laid bare. She was no longer free. Kerrigan's will bound her utterly. The Dark Templar stole her away regardless, breaking through Kerrigan's defenses. But the matriarch's chains were too deep. With a heavy heart, Zeratul ended Razagal's life, denying Kerrigan her prize. The Queen of Blades, impressed by his resolve, spared him, delighting in the guilt that would haunt him forever. After the battle on Char, Duran vanished from Kerrigan's side. She did not know where he had gone or why. Zeratul, fleeing with a small war band, searched the stars for Artanis and other survivors. Strange Protoss power signals drew them to a shadowed moon, but the signals were false. They came from a crude Terran device. Leading the strike himself, Zeratul uncovered a hidden facility guarded by mercenaries. Inside it lay horrors. Experiments blending Protoss and Zerg biology, weaving together what should never be joined. At the heart of it was all the proof. A hybrid abomination, alive within its stasis cell. Duran appeared then, confronting Zeratul. He revealed the hybrid as part of a vast cycle, a force destined to reshape the universe. Many such creatures, he said, already slept on countless worlds, awaiting their time. Zeratul recoiled in horror. He slew the hybrid, destroyed the facility, and fled. But the knowledge weighed upon him like a curse. He could not yet share what he had seen. On Char, Kerrigan's strength waned. Duran was gone, and much of her swarm lay stranded when 3 great fleets descended upon her. Minsk's Dominion, Dugal's Directorate, and Artanis' Protoss. But one by one she crushed them. Minsk's armada fell, its emperor forced into retreat, the vow of vengeance. Artanis, too, was broken, promising retribution. At last, only Dugal's UED fleet remained. Kerrigan would not grant him surrender. Instead, she gave him a mocking head start before loosing the swarm in pursuit. As the shattered fleet fled toward Earth, Dugal penned his final letter to his wife, admitting the folly of pride, the futility of taming the Zerg, and the guilt of Stukov's death. Then, he ended his own life. None of the Directorate's ships ever returned. When the Brood War ended, Kerrigan stood unchallenged. She allowed the Dominion and the Protoss to survive, for now. She sensed a greater storm looming. The Zerg withdrew into their territory, silent and unseen. Months passed, then years. No great offensives came. Some believed the Queen of Blades had settled her conquest. Others feared she prepared for something far worse. Those who ventured into swarm-held space in search of answers never returned. The Terran Dominion emerged weakened. It lost its grip on the Kalmorian Combine and the Omojan Proctorate, relying on mercenaries to plug its wounds. Yet, by 2502, it had recovered enough from Minsk to declare the Zerg pacified and turn his eye back to consolidating his rule. The protoss remade themselves into the Daylam, with Artanis as hierarch, uniting Kailai and Nerazim under one banner. Zeratul, broken by Razagal's death, vanished into exile. Jim Raynor continued the fight, not against the Zerg, but against Minx's dominion, leading his raiders in rebellion. Yet his struggle saw little success. The Koprulu Sector remained scarred, but little had changed. The Directorate was gone, its invasion undone. The great powers licked their wounds, waiting. And 4 years of uneasy silence would pass before the fires of war would burn once again.